The notification that started everything. Chapter 1. Dad added Grandpa to the chat. I want to be clear about something before this story goes any further. None of this was my idea. The family group chat had existed in a kind of comfortable, chaotic peace for about 3 years. Before my father decided to blow the whole thing up. We'd had our rhythm. Mom posted recipes she'd never actually make. My sister Becca sent approximately 47 photos of her dog, Muffin, per week. My brother Derek used the chat exclusively to complain about traffic, as though the rest of us were somehow responsible for the I-95 corridor. My cousin Jill shared inspirational quotes every Sunday morning at 6 a.m. An Act 1 considered a form of psychological warfare, and my Uncle Pete responded to everything with lol. Regardless of whether it was remotely funny. It was a system. It worked. Nobody was particularly enriched by it. But nobody was particularly harmed either. Then my dad typed the 7 words that changed everything. I added Grandpa Victor to the chat. I remember exactly where I was when I read it. I was sitting in my apartment in Columbus, eating cereal for dinner, because it was a Tuesday and I had decided that Tuesdays were for cereal. I read the message twice. Then I put my spoon down. Then I picked it up again. Because the cereal wasn't going to eat itself. And existential dread is no reason to let perfectly good Honey Nut Cheerios go soggy. My phone immediately started buzzing like it was having a small seizure. Becca, wait, what? Derek, why? Jill, oh how sweet. Smiling face with hearts. Uncle Pete, lol. Mom, Richard, we talked about this. That last one was interesting. Mom had known. They had talked about it. This was premeditated. I typed, hi Grandpa. Waving hand. I sent it mostly out of reflex. The way you say you too when a waiter tells you to enjoy your meal. Social autopilot. The truth was, I had no idea what Grandpa Victor joining the family chat actually meant in practice. The man was 81 years old. He still referred to his television remote as the channel contraption. He had once asked me, with complete sincerity, whether emails were the same thing as faxes. The last time I had seen him use a phone was to call my aunt on her landline. And even then he'd dialed the number 3 times before getting it right. Because he kept hitting the end call button halfway through. How did you even get him set up? I called my dad that evening. Your cousin Jimmy helped, Dad said, with the satisfied tone of a man who believes he has solved a problem, but has actually only created a different, larger one. He went over last Sunday, set up the account, added him to the chat, showed him how to read messages and how to reply. A pause. Jimmy says he showed him. Dad, he's a smart man, your grandfather. He's a brilliant man. He's also 81 and has the phone, no offense, that you got him, which has a cracked screen and autocorrect set to Portuguese for some reason. We fixed the Portuguese thing. Did you? Another pause. Mostly. I went back to my cereal, which had long since achieved the texture of wet cardboard, and I thought about Grandpa Victor sitting in his house in Millbrook. The house he'd lived in for 53 years, the house that smelled like pine cleaner and old books and the particular brand of pipe tobacco he'd quit in 1987. But whose ghost still lived in the walls, holding that cracked phone and reading our collective nonsense in real time. Becca's dogs. Derek's traffic. Jill's 6 a.m. Sunday ambushes. I genuinely didn't know whether to feel touched or terrified. The first week, Grandpa said nothing at all. Not a single word. Not a syllable. Not even a period accidentally sent as a message. Which is how most elderly relatives first make their presence known in a group chat. The messages kept flowing around him the way a river flows around a new rock. At first with a little turbulence. Then smoothly, as if the rock had always been there. Becca posted Muffin in a Halloween costume. It was not Halloween. Becca simply owned a lot of dog costumes. Derek announced that the merge lane on Route 9 was an actual crime against humanity. Jill sent a quote about gratitude that was attributed to Einstein, but was almost certainly not said by Einstein. Uncle Pete said lol, and in the little circle next to each message sat Grandpa's profile photo. The one Jimmy had set up, which was a picture of Grandpa from Becca's wedding 4 years ago. Slightly out of focus, in which he appeared to be looking at something just off camera. With a mild expression of suspicion. That little out of focus, mildly suspicious face watched all of our messages without comment. Do you think he's actually reading them? Becca texted me privately. No idea, I replied. Maybe Jimmy never actually explained how to scroll. Maybe. Should we call him? And say what? Hey Grandpa. Just checking you know how to operate the chat you haven't spoken in. Yeah, actually. But we didn't call. We all have this instinct, in families, to let the slightly awkward thing simply continue existing, rather than poke at it and risk making it more awkward. So Grandpa's silent little face kept watching from the margins. And the rest of us kept chattering, and 2 weeks passed. Then, on a Tuesday evening, it was definitely a Tuesday. I remember because I was eating cereal again. My phone buzzed with a single notification from the family chat. I opened it. There, beneath Jill's announcement that she had finally signed up for a pottery class, was Grandpa Victor's first ever message to the family group chat. Thumbs up. That was it. Just the little blue thumb. No words. No context. No indication of which part of the pottery announcement had moved him to respond. Or whether he had perhaps meant to send something else and hit the wrong button. Or whether this was an accident entirely. I stared at it for a long time. Then I started laughing, alone in my apartment, cereal spoon in hand, until my eyes watered. Chapter 2. The thumb heard round the family. The thumbs up divided us almost immediately. Not dramatically. The way families divide over politics or who gets the china when grandma dies. More the way families divide over whether the thermostat should be set at 68 or 70. A low-grade, persistent disagreement that nobody fully resolves, and everyone carries into every gathering for the rest of their lives. Becca thought it was adorable. It's like he's a little emoji, she said over the phone. And I could hear Muffin barking in the background, presumably in agreement. Derek thought it was suspicious. What does it even mean? Did he like the pottery thing? Does he even know what pottery is in this context? Is he just pressing buttons? Jill, bless her, chose to frame it spiritually. Her next Sunday morning message, sent at 6:04 a.m., pushing the boundaries of her own schedule, was a quote about how wisdom speaks in few words, followed by a little dove emoji, which I suspected was intended as a tribute to Grandpa. Uncle Pete said lol. Mom called me. He figured it out, she said, with the warmth of someone who had clearly been rooting for the experiment all along. He figured out the thumbs up button, I said. That's a start. Mom, Jill just got a thumbs up for her pottery announcement. You got a thumbs up for the photo of the new curtains. I got a thumbs up for telling everyone I got a promotion. He acknowledged it, with a thumb. With his thumb. He reached out, sweetheart. I thought about arguing further. But I've been arguing with my mother since approximately 1994. And my record is not good. I let it go. What I couldn't quite let go was the strange feeling the thumbs up gave me. Because here's the thing about a thumbs up. It is, in the language of modern communication, the ultimate non-committal gesture. It means I have seen this. It means acknowledged. It means I am in receipt of your message and choosing not to engage further. It's what you send when someone tells you the meeting has been moved to Thursday. And you want to confirm you got the information, without starting a conversation about it. It did not feel like an appropriate response to my promotion. And yet, there was something that kept me from being fully annoyed. Maybe it was the image of Grandpa holding that phone. Maybe it was the fact that it was his first message. That out of everything he could have done, called us, stayed silent forever, sent some accidental string of letters. He'd found the one button he was comfortable with and pressed it. Like planting a flag. I am here. I have arrived. This is my territory, and my territory is small and blue and shaped like a thumb. Derek, who works in tech sales and therefore thinks about communication in a way that is slightly exhausting to be around, had a theory. He laid it out in a voice memo he sent to me and Becca, which was 12 minutes long. I'll spare you the full 12 minutes. The summary: Grandpa had learned a single response and was using it as a universal reply because the alternative, actually typing, was too overwhelming. The thumb was a default, a safe harbor, and we should, Derek concluded, feel concern about what this indicated for Grandpa's adaptability in the modern world. Becca's response to the 12-minute voice memo was, "Okay, but Muffin just sneezed and it was so cute, paw prints." Derek replied, "I'm being serious." Grandpa replied, "Thumbs up." I genuinely do not know if Grandpa understood what he was thumbs-upping there. Whether he'd seen Derek's voice memo, or Becca's response, or just the general scroll of the conversation. But the timing was so perfect that I saved a screenshot and still have it to this day. The thumbs up began to take on a life of its own over the following weeks. It became, without any formal announcement, Grandpa's signature. His brand. His one contribution to the relentless, rolling scroll of family communication. Becca posted a new photo of Muffin every day for a week because she admitted to me privately, "I want to get the thumb. It's like a little game now." She got the thumb on day 4. She texted me 5 separate party popper emojis in celebration. Mom posted the recipe for the lemon cake she'd apparently been making for 30 years. But had never written down. Because she was finally writing down all her recipes and putting them in a folder for us. She got a thumb. She phoned me immediately, delighted. Even Derek, the thumb skeptic, posted a long rant about his city's parking enforcement policies, a subject on which he had documented views, and admitted to me, quietly, that he'd checked 4 times to see if Grandpa had thumbed it. He had. Derek mentioned this casually, as if it meant nothing, in a tone that suggested it meant a great deal. And me? I found myself doing it too. I posted a photo of the first snow of the season outside my apartment window. Something I might not have normally bothered to share. Who needs another snow photo? But I shared it anyway, with some vague awareness that I was throwing a line into the chat. And hoping Grandpa was on the other end. He thumbed it within 20 minutes. I looked at the thumbs up on my snow photo, and felt something strange and warm and hard to name, like receiving a letter from a long way away. Then things got complicated. The first real test of the thumb system, what I had started privately calling it, came when Becca announced in the chat that she and her husband, Tom, were having problems. Not huge problems, she emphasized. Not divorce problems, just problems. The kind of problems that involve one person feeling like they do all the grocery shopping, and the other person feeling like grocery shopping is not actually a fair measure of marital contribution. And somehow, from this disagreement about grocery shopping, blossoming into a much larger disagreement about everything. Becca is many things, but private is not one of them. She processes out loud, in real time, to anyone who will listen. It's a quality I genuinely admire and am also mildly exhausted by. She shared all of this in the family chat at about 10:30 on a Wednesday night. In a series of messages that arrived in rapid succession. The kind of texting that sounds like someone typing while pacing. "Okay, so Tom and I had a bit of a situation tonight. Nothing serious, but we had an argument. About groceries, but also kind of not about groceries, you know. Anyway, I'm fine, I just needed to say it somewhere. Also, Muffin is being very supportive, dog face. The family mobilized with the speed and coordination we rarely achieve in any other context. Mom sent 3 paragraphs about communication in marriage, learned. She said, from 34 years of experience with Dad. Jill sent a quote about conflict being the friction that polishes the stone of love. Attributed this time to someone I'd never heard of. I sent a simple hey, that sounds rough. You doing okay? Uncle Pete, against all odds and precedent, sent hope we're okay kiddo. Which, coming from Pete, was practically a sonnet. Then Grandpa's notification arrived. Thumbs up. The chat went quiet in a way that is hard to describe. Quiet in a digital sense. Meaning nobody typed anything for a solid 3 minutes. Which in family chat time is an eternity. You could feel everyone looking at that thumb. Becca texted me privately, did Grandpa just thumbs up my marital problems? It appears so, I typed. I don't know how to feel about that. Yeah, like on one hand, he engaged. On the other hand, the thumb, Jamie. I called her instead of typing. She answered on the second ring. And I could hear Muffin's nails clicking on the hardwood floor. Which I knew meant Becca was pacing. Maybe it's his way of saying he's there, I offered. Or maybe he hit the wrong button. Maybe. Or maybe, she said. With the rising energy she gets when she's working something out. He doesn't know what else to do. Like, what would you even say? Sorry to hear about the groceries, honey. When you put it that way. She paused. I wanted to feel like he got it, you know? Like the message landed. It landed, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure I believed it. He reads them. Does he? I didn't have a good answer for that. None of us did, really. That was the central mystery of the thumb system. It told you that Grandpa had been there. In the vicinity of the message, present enough to produce the thumb. It didn't tell you anything about what he'd understood, or felt, or wanted to say. Chapter 3. Every thumb tells a story probably. After the marital problems incident, the family's relationship with Grandpa's thumb became more charged. Where before it had been a mild curiosity, charming, even, in its consistency. It now carried an undercurrent of interpretation. Every thumbs up became a Rorschach test for whoever had sent the message. Jill, who had started attending a pottery class, and was very committed to updating the family about her progress, got a thumb on every update and chose to read it as wholehearted enthusiasm. Grandpa loves my pottery journey, she told me over the phone. In a tone that suggested she'd found a spiritual mentor. Derek, who posted increasingly niche content, road work updates. A lengthy treatise on why his neighborhood's leaf-blowing schedule was inconsiderate. A photo of a parking ticket he felt was unjust. Seemed to interpret each thumb as a vote of solidarity. He gets it, Derek said. Grandpa understands. He lived through things that gave him perspective. On leaf blowers? On injustice generally. Mom interpreted every thumb as Grandpa saying I'm proud of you. Which was lovely and almost certainly not always accurate. Surely Grandpa was not specifically proud of the chat where Mom described, in real time, the process of entangling the Christmas lights. And me? I started to feel, in a way I didn't entirely want to examine, that the thumbs Grandpa sent to me were somehow different from the ones he sent to everyone else. Which is absurd. A thumb is a thumb. The algorithm doesn't know it's going to my messages. Versus Derek's parking ticket manifesto. But there's something about your grandfather liking your post. Even if it's just a snow photo, even if the like is a single blue emoji. That does something irrational and warm to a person. I had moved to Columbus 6 years ago for work. And in those 6 years I'd seen Grandpa Victor maybe 3 or 4 times a year. Holidays, the occasional summer visit. In between, there were phone calls, which both of us were intermittent about. Grandpa was better at it than me. He'd call on birthdays and sometimes on random Tuesday afternoons. just to say he was thinking of me. And I'd answer if I happened not to be in a meeting. And if I was in a meeting, I'd tell myself I'd call back, and sometimes I did. The thumb was consistent in a way that I'll admit, was not. Every day, or close to it, the family chat generated its noise. And more often than not, somewhere in that noise, Grandpa's thumbs up appeared. It didn't matter if the conversation was interesting or mundane, or, in the case of a particularly memorable week, primarily about whether Jill's pottery vase looked like a vase or like a sad balloon. The thumb arrived, patient and small and blue. I started to feel that the thumb was more than an acknowledgement. I couldn't have told you what more it was. But more. Then came my cousin Ellie's failed exam. Ellie is 20 years old, a junior in college in Boston. And the youngest person in our family chat by a significant margin. She'd been added to the chat at 16, which everyone agreed was probably a mistake, given that we immediately started discussing Aunt Carol's hip surgery in graphic detail. But she'd stayed, and over the years she'd become one of the more active members. Sending memes, asking for advice. Occasionally being savagely right about things in ways that reminded you that young people are paying attention even when you think they aren't. Ellie posted in the chat late on a Thursday night. She'd failed her organic chemistry exam. Not by a little. She'd failed it badly, she said. Like, embarrassingly badly. She'd been studying for weeks, she thought she had it. And she'd sat down in that exam room. And the questions had looked like they were written in a language she'd never learned. She'd failed, and her GPA was in trouble, and she was scared. And she didn't know what to do. She typed all of this out at 11:47 p.m. And then, I suspect, sat in her dorm room with the specific hollow feeling of having confessed something to the void, and waited to see if the void had anything useful to say. The family responded. Mom talked about resilience. I talked about office hours and tutors. And the fact that one exam doesn't define a person. Derek said something surprisingly kind about how he'd failed his first sales certification. And it turned out not to matter at all. Jill sent a quote. Uncle Pete sent you got this kid flexed bicep. Which, again, for Pete, was remarkable. Then Grandpa's thumb arrived. And Ellie posted. Thanks everyone folded hands even you Grandpa lol. The lol was affectionate. I know Ellie well enough to know that. But it was also dismissive in the way that only someone 20 years old can be dismissive. Casually, without cruelty. In the specific way that says I know this gesture and I know its limits. I felt something then. Something I didn't fully understand. It came to a head because these things always do, in families over the holidays. Mom had posted a detailed message about Christmas plans. Dates, who was bringing what, dietary restrictions. Jill had recently decided she was mostly gluten aware. Which the rest of us agreed was a lifestyle choice we were choosing not to comment on. Sleeping arrangements, the whole infrastructure of a family Christmas. The message ended with, let us know if this works, everyone. So excited to have everyone together. Red heart. The replies came in. Yes, yes, can't wait. We'll bring the wine. I'll do the gluten-aware rolls Jill I promise. Muffin is coming, is that okay? Etc. And Grandpa's thumb arrived. And this time, it was my sister Becca who said it out loud. Or typed it out loud. In the chat, where everyone could see. Grandpa, I love you, but can you please just say something? Like anything? Even just yes, I'll be there. We've been talking to you through a thumbs up for 3 months. And we just want to hear from you. We miss you. Is everything okay? There was a long silence. In terms of the chat, 20 minutes without a reply is a very long silence. Grandpa did not reply. Not that day. Not the next day either. His little out of focus, mildly suspicious profile photo watched the chat from the margins. And said nothing. Chapter 4 The Weekend Visit. We didn't coordinate it. That's what's funny. Or maybe it's not funny so much as it's the kind of thing that happens in families. When everyone is worried about the same thing. And nobody wants to admit they're worried. So instead everyone independently makes the decision to show up at Grandpa Victor's house in Millbrook. On the same weekend in early December. I drove from Columbus. 4 hours. I told myself it was because I'd been meaning to visit. And the holidays were a good time. I did not tell myself it was because of Becca's message. And the silence that followed it. Becca and Tom drove from New Jersey. They were fine, by the way the grocery situation had resolved itself. Through a combination of a shared grocery app. And Tom learning what a shallot is. Derek drove from Baltimore. Even Ellie took a bus from Boston. Which for a 20-year-old with a bus pass. And an organic chemistry remediation to plan. Was not a trivial commitment. We didn't plan it together. We just all arrived within about 2 hours of each other on Saturday morning. And when the third car pulled into Grandpa's driveway. And it turned out Derek was in it. We all looked at each other with the specific expression of people who have been caught doing the same embarrassing thing simultaneously. I was in the area, Derek said. No, you weren't, said Becca. Relatively speaking, Derek, Baltimore to Millbrook is not in the area. I have a flexible definition of area. Grandpa answered the door before we'd finished arguing. He was wearing the blue cardigan that I think he bought in approximately 1978. And has worn for every winter since. And his white hair was neatly combed. And he looked at the four of us on his porch. With the same mildly suspicious expression as his profile photo. And then his face broke into a slow, wide smile. Well, he said, I'd better put the kettle on. The inside of Grandpa's house was exactly as it always had been. Which is to say it was perfect. Not perfect as in immaculate. Perfect as in dense with the evidence of a life. Every surface holding something that had a history. Bookshelves that had not been reorganized since the Reagan administration. A kitchen that smelled like coffee. And the particular brand of soap Grandpa had been using my entire life. We filled the house with noise the way families do. Several conversations happening at once. Becca showing Grandpa photos of Muffin on her phone. Derek locating the biscuit tin Grandpa kept in the same cupboard. It had lived in for as long as any of us could remember. Ellie curling up in the armchair by the window with her legs over the side. In the way she'd been sitting in that chair since she was small enough to fit in it sideways. Grandpa moved through it all slowly and comfortably, the eye of the hurricane. Refilling the kettle when it ran out, sitting in his particular chair at the kitchen table. Smiling at things people said with the full-faced attention of a man who is not in a hurry. I watched him. I've always been a watcher in family situations. Probably because I'm the middle one. Not the oldest, who establishes territory. Not the youngest, who commands attention by virtue of smallness. I've had a lot of practice at the sidelines, and from the sidelines, you see things. What I saw was that Grandpa was happy. Genuinely, straightforwardly, completely happy. Not performing happiness for our benefit. Grandpa Victor was constitutionally incapable of performed emotion. A quality that had made him seem austere to me when I was young. And that I now recognized as something rarer and more valuable. He was just happy. We were here, in his house, and he was happy. Which is why it felt suddenly important to ask the thing none of us had quite asked directly. It was Ellie who said it first. Of course it was Ellie. 20 years old, freshly humbled by organic chemistry. And therefore temporarily unburdened of the self-censorship that the rest of us carry like a second carry-on bag. Through every family interaction. We were sitting in the living room after dinner. Grandpa had made soup, an enormous amount of soup for an army. Soup that suggested he'd known more of us were coming than we'd told him. And there was that particular post-meal quiet where the conversation could go anywhere. Grandpa, Ellie said, from her armchair. tucking her feet under her. Why do you only send the thumbs up? She said it so simply. Not with Becca's frustrated energy from the chat, not with any judgment. Just curious. Like asking why he kept his books in alphabetical order. Or why he preferred the red mug to the blue one. Grandpa looked at her. Then he looked around at the rest of us. Me on the sofa, Becca next to me with her phone face down in her lap. Derek in the other armchair. Tom on the footstool next to Becca because there weren't quite enough seats. And Tom was the kind of person who cheerfully took the footstool. He didn't answer right away. He reached forward and picked up his tea mug, the red one. And wrapped both hands around it. And there was a moment of quiet that wasn't uncomfortable, just spacious. I'll show you something, he said, and started to get up. He was gone for no more than 2 minutes. We looked at each other in the way you do when something is about to happen. And you're not sure what it is, but you know it's significant. He came back with a notebook. It was a composition notebook. The black and white marbled kind, the kind I'd used in school. But older, clearly purchased some time ago. Its spine slightly bent, its cover soft with handling. He held it in both hands as he settled back into his chair. With a care that told you it was not a casual object. He held it out toward us. Becca took it first, then passed it to me. I opened it. His handwriting. Grandpa's handwriting, which I knew from birthday cards and the occasional letter. He still wrote letters, actual paper letters. A fact I was always vaguely moved by and not good enough at replying to. His handwriting. Careful and slightly shaky in the way of a hand that knows how to write. But is working harder than it used to. The first page had a date at the top. The date he'd been added to the chat. And then, beneath the date, the messages. Transcribed, everyone. Becca's first photo of Muffin with her caption. Dad's announcement. My, hi Grandpa. Waving hand. Mom's recipe. Derek's traffic complaints. Jill's quotes. All of it, in Grandpa's careful hand. Filling line after line of that composition notebook. I turned the page. More messages. More dates. I turned further. More. And more. The notebook was full. Not half full, not mostly full. Full. Every page dense with that shaky, careful script. The transcribed scroll of our family chat going back to the day he'd been added. Months of messages. Everything we'd sent into what we'd half thought might be a void. And here it all was, held and kept and written out by hand. In his house, in Millbrook, in the blue cardigan, with the red mug. I looked up. Everyone was looking at the notebook except Grandpa, who was looking at us. With an expression I'd never quite seen on his face before. Or maybe I had, and hadn't known how to read it. Open. A little nervous. Hoping. Why? Becca said. Her voice was doing something complicated. Why did you write them all down? Grandpa put his mug down on the side table. He looked at it for a moment, then back at us. The screen is small, he said. And the letters move if I'm not careful with my eyes. A slight pause. And the typing. I can't do the typing fast enough. By the time I've worked out how to say something, the conversation has moved on and my words would land in the wrong place. He gave a small, self-aware smile. Like arriving at a party an hour late. And telling a joke about something that happened an hour ago. So you write them down instead, Ellie said. I read them. I write them down. Then I can take my time with them. He nodded at the notebook, still in my hands. That one's the first. There are 2 more in the drawer. 2 more. I looked at Becca. Becca looked like she might be about to cry. Which meant I might be about to cry. Which meant I needed to hold myself together. Because someone in this family needed to maintain structural integrity. And Derek looked like he was already a lost cause. So the thumbs up, I said, and my voice came out steadier than I felt. That was the only thing you could. It was the only thing I could do quickly enough, Grandpa said. He held up his right hand, the hand that had written all those pages. And he flexed the thumb slowly. I found the button. It seemed like a useful button. The smile again, warmer now. My way of saying I'm here. I got the message. I'm holding onto it. Chapter 5. The thumb finds its voice. Nobody spoke for a bit. There's a specific family silence that means something is happening. That is important. And nobody wants to break it with the wrong word. We were sitting inside that silence. Uncle Pete, who had not made the trip to Millbrook, because Pete doesn't really make trips anywhere, would have said lol if he'd been there. And somehow it would have been exactly right. Eventually Becca said, "Grandpa, can I hug you?" "I'm not going anywhere," Grandpa said. She did, and then we sort of all did. In the loose, clumsy, wholly genuine way that families hug. When there isn't choreography. Someone's elbow in someone else's ear. Grandpa's cardigan scratchy against my cheek. His hand patting my back in that specific rhythm he'd always had. Slow and deliberate. As if he was sending a message in a code that only meant you are here and so am I. Later, when the hugging had sorted itself out, and we'd moved back to our various seats and Grandpa had made more tea. He seemed to believe that tea was the solution to most situations. A belief I was finding increasingly reasonable. We talked. Really talked, the way families sometimes do. After something has cracked open enough to let the air in. I asked Grandpa about the phone. Had Jimmy actually explained how to send messages? Or had he been working it out on his own? Jimmy showed me, Grandpa said. With the slight diplomacy of a man being kind about his well-meaning great-nephew. And then I tried. The autocorrect. He shook his head. It changed everything I wrote. Turned my words into something I didn't recognize. What did it change them to? Derek asked. The first thing I tried to type was hello everyone. It became Jello evermore. We lost Derek. He went fully. Forehead on his knee, shoulders shaking, making no sound. To be fair, I managed. That's a kind of poetry. I did not feel it was the right first impression, Grandpa said. With the contained dignity of a man who has considered and rejected the option of becoming Jello evermore. He'd found the thumbs up, he explained, by accident. Tapped something trying to scroll and up it came. And someone gave a thumbs up back. And he understood that it worked, and so he stuck with it. It was fast. It was safe. The autocorrect could not get its hands on it. I knew it wasn't enough, he said, and here his voice shifted slightly. Grew a little more careful. I knew you'd want more. But I didn't want to disappear. I didn't want to read everything you were all sending and give you nothing back. He picked up the red mug. Even a small thing felt better than nothing. I thought about that. Small thing versus nothing. The thumbs up on my promotion, on my snow photo. On the message I'd sent when I was sick last month and just wanted someone to know. A small thing, not nothing. We should have called more, I said. You call enough, Grandpa said. Which we all knew wasn't strictly true but which was exactly the right thing to say. We could help you figure out the typing thing, Ellie offered. She'd unfolded herself from the armchair, and was sitting on the floor near Grandpa's feet, which she'd also been doing since she was small. Like, actually walk through it. There's a voice-to-text thing, you just talk and it writes what you say. Grandpa looked interested and skeptical in equal measure. It understands me? Usually. It might think you said something weird occasionally. It already does that when I type. Fair. But this might be better. He considered. All right. Show me. Ellie spent the rest of that afternoon showing Grandpa voice to text. I watched from the couch, ostensibly reading a book I'd found on his shelf. But actually watching them over the top of it. Ellie patient and animated, demonstrating. Laughing when the app made mistakes. Grandpa bent over the phone with his particular focused frown. The frown he'd had when he used to help me with math problems in this same living room. 20-some years ago. Becca, beside me, had quietly opened the composition notebook again. And was reading it from the beginning. I watched her face move through the entries. Something like recognition, or recollection. The experience of seeing your own words in someone else's handwriting. He's got Muffin's Halloween costume photo in here, she said, quietly. He wrote, in the margin, is this a pumpkin or a bumblebee? Charming either way. I felt something move behind my sternum. What was the costume? A hot dog. She looked up at me. He thought it was a pumpkin or a bumblebee. And he still wrote charming either way. That's Grandpa Victor in a sentence, actually. The specific grace of finding something charming when you don't entirely understand it. Derek, who had recovered from the Jello Evermore revelation, had stationed himself in the kitchen on the vague pretext of doing the washing up. But was actually, I suspected, giving himself some space. I'd seen him wipe his eyes twice. Derek cries at things he won't admit to crying at. And he's been managing this fact for his entire adult life with varying success. Tom, who is not related to any of us by blood, and therefore had no complicated history with this living room, was simply enjoying himself. He'd found a book about the history of bridge construction on Grandpa's shelf. And was reading it with genuine interest. Because Tom is fundamentally a good and uncomplicated person. And I've always liked him for it. At some point in the late afternoon, Grandpa figured out how to send a voice-to-text message. His first attempt, dictated carefully with Ellie coaching him, came through in the family chat as, "Hello everyone. This is Grandpa Victor. I am trying something new." Then a brief pause, and, "Testing. Is anyone there?" The chat erupted. Mom sent 6 emojis in rapid succession: party popper, red heart, loudly crying face, raising hands, sparkles. And one I didn't immediately recognize. Jill sent an ecstatic message about breakthroughs. Dad sent Victor, in all caps, which was the most animated I'd seen my father be in text form in recorded history. Uncle Pete, who was apparently monitoring the chat from wherever Pete spends his Saturdays, sent lol. The exclamation marks indicating, by Pete's communication standards, that he was practically screaming. Grandpa, watching the notifications roll in on his phone, leaned back in his chair and looked quietly satisfied. The expression of a man who has planted something, and is watching the first green come up. He dictated another message, slowly. "I have been reading everything you send me. I should have said so sooner. I wrote it all down." Mom replied, "We know, sweetheart, blue heart." She didn't know yet, actually. We'd have to tell her about the notebooks over the phone. Which we did that evening. Sitting around Grandpa's kitchen table while he made us more soup. There was still an extraordinary amount of soup. And Mom's reaction on speakerphone made Grandpa duck his head with a pleasure that was almost shy. Before we left Sunday afternoon, I went to find Grandpa in the kitchen, where he was standing at the window watching the birds at the feeder in the back garden. Finches and a fat little chickadee that he'd named Gerald. Because of course he had. "Thank you for showing us the notebooks," I said. He kept watching Gerald for a moment. "I was nervous about it," he said. "Wondered if it would seem strange." "It didn't. I just like to keep things," he said simply. "Always have. Your grandmother used to say I kept everything." A small, inward smile, the kind that has someone else inside it. She wasn't wrong. I thought about the notebooks in the drawer. 3 of them. Months of our family's noise, transcribed in his careful hand. Kept in the same house where he'd been keeping things for 53 years. "Next time something happens," I said. "Something you want to say more than a thumbs up for use the voice thing. Ellie'll help you practice. She's a good teacher," Grandpa said. "Patient." He looked at me sideways. "She gets it from your grandmother's side. We're not going to tell Derek that." "Absolutely not." He patted my arm. "Drive carefully, Jamie." The drive home to Columbus was 4 hours of my own company. And a lot of thinking. I thought about the notebooks, what it means to keep things. To write something down in your own hand, to make a record of it. There's a theory, which I am not academically qualified to advance but will advance anyway, that writing something down by hand is a form of full attention. You can't write fast enough to write carelessly. You have to slow down to the pace of the words. And in that slowing down, you actually encounter them. Grandpa had encountered every word we'd sent him. Every recipe, every traffic complaint, every pottery update, every dog photo. Every marital problem shared at 10:30 p.m. on a Wednesday. Every failed exam, every snow photo from a window in Columbus. He'd written it in his careful hand and kept it. And all we'd seen was the thumb. I thought about communication, which is rich, coming from me. A person who regularly lets calls go to voicemail. And considers all text you later a complete sentence. I thought about how much of how we talk to each other is shaped by the tools available. And how often we mistake the tool for the message. We'd looked at the thumbs up and seen minimalism, dismissal. The digital equivalent of a shrug. We hadn't considered that on the other side of that tiny blue emoji was a man with slow hands and fast eyes. Reading everything, keeping it all, present in the only way he could manage. I thought about the word signature. Becca had called it Grandpa's signature early on, as a joke. And she hadn't been wrong. A signature is a mark. It says I was here. This passed through me. The thumbs up was Grandpa's mark on every message we sent him. Not a dismissal but a witness. He saw it. It mattered. About halfway back to Columbus, my phone buzzed. I had it connected to the car's speaker. So the notification played aloud into the empty car. Family chat. Grandpa Victor. His voice to text, careful and slightly formal. The way he'd always been when writing. Good drive everyone. The soup is put away. Gerald had extra seeds today. Thinking of you all. Then, half a minute later, a second notification. Also thumbs up. I burst out laughing. Alone in my car on the interstate, full of soup and something harder to name. Laughing at my grandfather's thumbs up. Sent this time on purpose, in full knowledge of what it meant. Deliberately appended to his own message like a signature. Like saying, I'm still here. I'm always here. I've got all of this. I dictated a reply. My own voice, into the empty car, sent back down the line to a house in Millbrook. Where a man in a blue cardigan was watching Gerald eat his extra seeds. Love you, Grandpa, I said. Talk soon. His reply came before I'd even finished the thought of it. Not the voice to text this time, just the old, familiar, irreplaceable thumbs up. That Christmas was the best one we'd had in years. Grandpa sat at the table with his phone, dictating messages into the family chat in real time. Commentary on the food. The rolls are very good, Jill, even with the flour situation. Observations about the dog. Gerald would not tolerate Muffin, but I believe Muffin would grow on him. Responses to Derek that suggested Grandpa had, in fact, been following the parking enforcement saga more closely than anyone realized. The ticket seems excessive. I would appeal. He still sends the thumbs up, sometimes. Force of habit, maybe, or preference. A tool that served him well and earned its place. We still screenshot them when the timing is particularly perfect. In the bedside drawer in Millbrook. There are now 5 composition notebooks. He started a 6th one in January. I know, because he sent a photo of it to the family chat. We all gave him a thumbs up.